This is the Startup Still Say podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Do us a favor, like, subscribe on YouTube or LinkedIn, and be sure to give us your feedback. Hope you enjoy this episode.
Everyone, to another episode of Startup Still Say. And today I am co-hosting again with Anthony, and we're welcoming Aniruddh Balasubramaniam today to our podcast. And Aniruddh, why don't you kick us into what your journey's been and a bit about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me today. Well, okay, so in brief, I come from a math and computer science background. So I did my undergrad at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, which is a 4-year pure sciences program. Typically, the journey of somebody who goes to a university like that, a pure sciences university, is to do a PhD. 99% of the class that I graduated with is actively doing a PhD right now. So so I come from a very research-oriented background and primarily math. In fact, when I joined university, I wanted to be a theoretical physicist. And a year and a half into it, you realize the field is so saturated. The number of seismic breakthroughs happening in recent times, I think the last seismic breakthrough maybe was 40 years ago. The field is very saturated, and so I quickly shifted focus over to math because my professor told me, if you join math, you can do anything later in life. You can be the latest Nobel Prize in chemistry went into computational analysis of proteins or something like that. So math makes you do anything. So so when I realized theoretical physics maybe not right for me, I quickly pivoted over to math and computer science, and that's where my journey kind of starts. So I graduated in the year 2020. That's the same year that COVID hit. So I was getting ready to start applying for different PhD programs, follow the same path as my classmates. But that's the year you realize, or even if I do join a good PhD program, the first year and a half is going to be all online. And you're not going to be getting the full experience out of it. So I spoke to my professor and asked him, hey, I'm a little unsure about this thing. I'm going to be spending the next 5-6 years of my life pursuing a PhD. And if the first year is going to be all online, and if that's how it starts, I'm not sure I'm going to be too enthusiastic about following up on this. And so he tells me, why do you even want to do a PhD in the first place? As somebody who's done a PhD, let me ask you this. Do you want to spend 5 years of your prime, which is the 20s of your life, marginally increasing the body of knowledge out there? And that kind of hit me. Damn, that is what a PhD is. You're spending 5 years of your prime marginally increasing the body of knowledge out there. And maybe one out of 10,000 PhDs might be something substantial and spectacular. But it's you never know where you're going to end up. So that made me pause and think for a bit, and I decided, hey, let me just take a year and decide what I want to do. And after this year, if my interests still lie in research, then maybe I'm going to go ahead with my PhD program. But let me just go into it with all guns blazing, make sure I'm properly motivated to get into this thing. So I took a year, and in that year, we were all stuck indoors, and it did kind of open up a little bit. But every establishment that you went to, you go to a movie theater, the first thing they're going to ask you is your phone number. For the sake of, I don't know if you remember this, but there was this idea of contact tracing back then, wherein wherever anybody went to, their phone number had to be collected, because if COVID kind of started spreading, they use those phone numbers to kind of create a map and figure out how to curb it. I don't think it worked at all. Because what happened, but every establishment started collecting your phone number, and the excuse was contact sharing. Hey, we have to do contact sharing. You've come to a restaurant, let's get your number. You've come to a grocery shop, let's get your number. So I was like, hey, look, now they're collecting my number because of the sake of contact tracing, but I bet you a year from now, when COVID's gone, this practice isn't going to stop. And that's exactly what happened. Once these businesses realized the tremendous benefit of having that piece of identifier for you, they're never going to stop. So I don't know what the state is in the US, but in India, every single establishment that you go to kind of asks for it, from buying groceries to getting a cup of coffee. Now there's this new trend of them making you download an app every time you go to a different establishment. And turns out, even for like a 5% discount, Indians are super happy giving out their number. And so I just, in that period of time, I just felt like, hey, look, this is not healthy at all. It is not healthy that everything we do online and offline gets aggregated around one single identifier. Plus, that's also the main identifier that they can use to target stuff at you, call you, bother you, spam you. So we just asked ourselves, can we figure out a way that people can connect and communicate, maybe connect with businesses, connect with other people without having to share any sort of personal identifiers for themselves, like a phone number or an email ID or anything like that. So the first idea that we approached is maybe we'll create something like a virtual identifier, something that's not so sensitive that people can share, in which case they don't have to worry about their primary identifier, their phone number being exposed. But the problem there is the problem with any sort of contact info. Once you have a unique personal identifier for a person, even if that's a virtual identifier or something more concrete like a phone number, they can be linked with each other. For example, if WhatsApp comes out with WhatsApp usernames, your WhatsApp username can be linked back to your phone number. So it's only as good as the first exposure event where it gets linked back to your original identity. And all contact info has this issue. If I give you my contact info, you now have it. There's no way for me to take it back. Plus, I don't get to control who you then share it with. Like, I can't stop you from sharing it with Anthony. I can't stop you from selling it to 3,000 other people. So the fundamental nature of contact info, any contact info, is that you have no control over it. You can't take it back. You can't control who it spreads to. You can't control the data that gets aggregated around it. So any true solution here for this problem would mean that we would have to create something that does not use any sort of contact info. And that kind of ignited the math brain in me, kind of trying to figure out a good cryptographic solution to this huge privacy problem. And that's the birth of our company, Numberless. What we do is we build, in nerd speak, we build authenticated identifierless communication protocols. What that means is I can connect with you, you can connect with me, but there's no contact info or identifier ever exchanged. So, like, we're creating a world where you are in complete control of who you're connected to, how much access they have to you, and whether or not they can connect you with other people. And none of your personal info is ever exposed. And yeah, that's our journey so far.
That's incredible. You've definitely scared me off of PhDs at this
Yeah.
point, but that is very true, right? Like, most places we are adding our phone numbers for any sort of accounts, discounts, whatever it is. It's a very easy transaction to do. And you're right, we forget or are desensitized about it's just a phone number, right? But there's a whole lot of information that's connected to us. So that's a brilliant idea at that. Sorry, Anthony, I know you were asking a question almost.
Oh, no, all good. So Aniruddh, I mean, brilliant story, right? I mean, every founder goes through that pain point before you say, okay, I mean, this is a pain point worth solving for. So thanks for sharing that. I mean, having spoken to you for an hour or so, I mean, that part didn't come out, so it's a good learning. So based off of that, what made you decide saying, okay, I mean, you have Numberless, right? I mean, this is the way you want to solve. Did you look for any existing technology that might have existed for you to take and piece it together to solve it? Because, I mean, the reason I ask is you've also created a brand new protocol called the Port protocol as part of Numberless, right? I mean, so in a way, you're kind of starting from scratch, from the ground floor, if you will, right? I mean, why did you decide that you needed a brand new protocol despite there being so many other protocols available?
Well, I think in this space, I don't think there's a lot of protocols available. I think most of the communication and authentication protocols out there rely on every individual having a clear public identifier. Even if we go web direction, your public identifier is your public key. In your in your key pair, it's your public key that's your identifier. So you still have a unique public identifier that's exposed to everybody else. So if the problem that we're trying to solve for is data aggregation and stopping people from aggregating data around a central identifier, I don't think there's been a lot of protocols developed to kind of solve that. So I think in that way we were new, and I couldn't find too many examples of good protocols. There are a couple of them out there, but just the fact that they haven't been used enough is kind of an indicator that maybe the protocol is not sound. So that's what made us like reluctant to piggyback on somebody else's protocol and maybe build our own protocol with our own set of proofs that it is secure and reliable.
Okay, that makes sense. And I mean, just fresh out of college in your case, right? I mean, obviously, you said, I mean, a lot of this happened during the COVID time. But I mean, given that you were a math and science major, I mean, this was a huge undertaking, right? Especially for someone, I mean, who spent a year thinking about what you did. You're also thinking about, okay, how are you going to, make ends meet? And you jump into something so challenging, but at the same time, I mean, the world needs this. What are some of those things that spurred you on and pulled together the right people to kind of bring Numberless together?
Well, you're right. Absolutely, I had to make ends meet. But thankfully, because it was COVID, one of the advantages is you could just crash with your parents. And in fact, they wanted you to live with them because they knew you were safe and secure and all of that. So I didn't have to worry about rent. I don't have to worry about food. I had no expenses at all. So there was no financial pressures per se, so I could pursue things that did not make sense in the moment. Plus, plenty of my friends were stuck at home too, all itching to do something, can't get out, can't do something out there. So they were all stuck at home. So I was really lucky that I found my co-founder, who I've known my entire life. So he was a University of Toronto computer science guy, and he was close to his final year of university, again similar to me, and he was also stuck at home, and it made a good team. I came with my math background, so I could back up the theoretical foundations of it, and he, with his computer science background, could help me with the implementation of these protocols. So a team was born, and we spent about 6 to 8 months developing these protocols. And at that point, COVID had kind of lifted, but we had this MVP kind of, I wouldn't even call it an MVP, it's just proof of technology, proof that it can be done. What we realized happened, the first time we suggested something like this, people thought, hey, can this even be done? And so our first step was to just show people that yes, it can be done. And so once we had something to show that it can be done, such a technology is viable, then we have to raise more resources. We have to raise more funding. So that's when we started shopping around, and we met a lot of people we showed this to, and the people who found it, who were extremely supportive and could see kind of the vision behind it, were folks at Catamaran Ventures. And so we raised our seed round of financing with them, and then we had a lot more resources to kind of get an office, hire more people, put the product together in a more professional way, improve the user experience, all of that, improve some marketing efforts, etc. But yeah, now that's where we are. We're in the middle of it. Our product port launched a couple of weeks ago, and we're getting good user growth so far.
That's great. Congratulations with that. I really appreciate, right? Because right now with privacy, you're right. Most of the effort or attention goes to how can we protect that unique identifier, but you're actually looking at like, how can I diffuse a situation where you need to aggregate it? So now, you have all of this done. In future, this is all live. How does that experience look like, going back into the movie theater saying, I'm not going to give you the number? What does that look like?
Well, yeah, so because the protocol hasn't spread enough yet, I still can't go to a business and say, hey, I'm not going to give you my phone number. So right now, the practice is I just tell them, I don't. So their excuse now, the brilliant excuse of getting my number is them saying we're going green, and so we don't want to print out an actual movie ticket or a receipt. We'd like to just send it to your phone, and that's why we need your number. I'm like, that's okay. I don't mind a little bit of global warming if you can print a ticket for me. So I just asked them to print a physical ticket now. Same thing with grocery stores. I don't mind a physical receipt. But the plan is, we think a lot of businesses are actually losing out on quality customers by taking their phone number. Imagine the last time you encountered a website and you wanted to know a little bit more about the service they provide or the product they sell. And you opened up their chatbot or you opened up their contact page. The first thing you saw was them asking for your number or personal information. How many of those times were you turned off by that and you said, hey, it's not worth me putting in so much of my personal information just to know a little bit of information about them? So I think businesses are actually losing out on their best customers because they're asking for this information. Because their best customers, people who are affluent and reasonably intellectual, these people are people who would like be super turned off by giving away the personal information. So what we're trying to do going forward is set up small pilot programs where we can actually make the case and prove the case that, hey, you'll actually increase your net lead creation, and you'll actually increase the number of customers you onboard just by not asking for their personal info. And we're in the process of setting those experiments up. It's still going to be a couple of weeks until we set it up. But yeah, if those experiments go well, in a couple of years from now, I would love to go to a movie theater and not give my number.
More power to that, right? Because especially, right, coming up, like you said, right, intellectual, affluent, doesn't matter. We also have protected population, right? Senior citizens, kids that are coming into this space. I would love to have a mechanism in place that protects them from giving out that information, which is going to be a huge thing, right? That's the point of entry for a lot of scams too. So that's a brilliant idea.
And think about AI. Think about the other side of AI. Look, AI is only so powerful because of the data you feed into it. And right now, there's a lot of data available because all of this data has been aggregated around our personal identifiers. And right now, even though AI is proceeding at a super good pace, the worst it can do is still not that bad. The worst it can do is like sell us on some stuff, not just to do this or that. But it's going to get even more sophisticated and complex. And I don't think it's safe for us to be so vulnerable to AI is going bad. Think about it. Right now, the worst thing you get is a spam or scam call. Most of the time you can tell something is a scam, like some of these calls. And spam, you can easily identify spam. But only because most of these spam calls are other humans on the other end trying to orchestrate it. But as AI gets more and more sophisticated, these scams are going to be harder and harder to recognize. And it's going to be very hard to continue a communication system where everybody is so accessible to everybody else. It's not hard for people to get my phone number. My phone number is published online. They just have to do a little bit of Googling. Or the first business I have to give my phone number to, they can just scrape my phone number off that business. So it's going to be very easy for AI to reach me. Plus, all this data aggregated around the phone number is going to make it very easy for AI to use that channel of communication into me to make me do anything. So I think going into this AI era, we have to recognize the flip side of data aggregation and try to make sure we're not just numbered sheep in the face of AI. And there is some level of individual human protection.
That makes sense, Aniruddh. So especially in the world of AI, right? I mean, we just can't be feeding into that big machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about the technology itself, or maybe let's just speak to the port app itself, right? So if I understand right, let's say you and I want to connect, Aniruddh. Let's say we meet at an event and we want to stay in touch. You show me, both of us download the port app. You show me a QR code of sorts. I scan it, and you and I get connected. And let's say tomorrow you don't want to keep in touch with me, or you just want to lose me. I mean, you can just say, lose Anthony or whatnot, and I can never ever get in touch with you, right? I mean, that's at least in the face of it, that's what I've seen happening, right? First of all, I mean, you can validate me if that's right, but I mean, and secondly, maybe just for the audience, I mean, just tell a little bit about how port works. What are some of the use cases that people can use port for? And then maybe once you're done with this, let's say phase 0 or phase 1, I mean, what's your vision with port? If you can talk about that a little bit, that'll be awesome.
Sure, sounds good. So port, the way we've designed port is we want a port to work in any situation that a phone number would work. So the central idea behind the port app are these instruments called ports. So typically when we want to connect with somebody, the connection instrument that we use would be a phone number or an email ID or a username. So the connection instrument in the port protocol, the port app, is something called a port. Now, the difference between a port and a phone number is a port is not a unique identifier to you. A port is a piece of single-use cryptographic information that can be used to form a secure end-to-end encrypted connection. So, and that port, so that information can be put into a QR code, it can be put into a link, it can be moved through NFC, so you can have two phones touch each other and that information can get exchanged. But basically, a port is the information, not the modality itself, like a QR code or a link. So, so typically, if somebody were to meet face to face, conventionally they would share exchange phone numbers. Here, you would put the port into a QR code, show that QR code, the other person scans it, and you're connected. As simple as that. And once a connection forms, the port itself and the information in it becomes unusable, even to attackers, even to anybody else. So now basically on the port app, you've basically created this connection, and an end-to-end encrypted secure connection. I know it is you on the other end, you know it's me on the other end, but there's no phone number, there's no identifier involved. So if I want to stop talking to you, or if you start bothering me and I don't want to talk to you anymore, I can just disconnect, kill the connection and walk away. And because there's no identifier for me, for you to like spam back or target back, I don't have to worry about unnecessary follow-ons or unnecessary spam, unnecessary unwanted pings, all of that stuff. Similarly, if I met you online or LinkedIn, something like that, and typically I would exchange my phone number with you on let's say LinkedIn chat or something like that, you can send a port. I can send a port to you as a simple link. You click on it, we're connected. The third way people connect with a phone number is maybe I want to connect you with somebody else and I share your phone number with somebody else. In such a situation, I can basically share a port that connects to you to somebody else only if you allow it. So you are in control. So you can control who I can connect you with. And as usual, you can take back. It's reversible. Unlike giving away a phone number which is not reversible, a port is completely reversible. So you can disconnect whenever and walk away. And you have complete understanding of where every connection came from, whether it's face-to-face, where you'll know if somebody connects you with somebody else, you know exactly how that connection came to be, because you know, hey, this connection is via Anthony Prakash. So I trust this connection because I trust the person who connected me with this person. Mm-hmm. So basically, any situation you would use a phone number, you can use a port. Ports work offline as well. So if you're on a train, you have no internet access, you can still create a port and show it to the other person and connect. That's basically how ports work. They're pieces of cryptographic information that need to be exchanged to form a connection. And you can do it in any situation that you would be exchanging a phone number.
So under the hood, Aniruddh, is there some sort of decentralization, or I mean, what is there a?
It is highly decentralized, in the sense that if you download the port app, the first thing you'll notice is there's no account creation process.
Exactly.
So there's no submitting an email or submitting a phone number, waiting for an OTP, adding a password. None of that exists. You just download the app, enter your name, and you're in. And this name never gets sent to us, our servers. So in fact, our servers basically don't see any identifying information about you. So even if, let's say, our servers are breached in any way, the worst that can be done is maybe the port service is down for a couple of hours until we get it back up again. But they can't get to know any information about you. Plenty of other platforms, even let's say something like WhatsApp, which claims to be end-to-end encrypted, if their servers are compromised, they might not be able to get the message data, but they'll still be attackers will which phone number spoke to which other phone number at what frequency, what your social graph is, so they can figure out who your wife is, who your girlfriend is, who your son is. All of that stuff can be figured out very easily just by understanding social. Yeah. So the metadata is almost no metadata is available on port servers. Just stuff that does not make sense to any attacker and cannot be traced back to the original person. So in that sense, we're highly decentralized in that only the people and the people that they're speaking to know what needs to be known to speak with each other, and our servers don't even know your name. So we've made sure we've taken every effort to ensure that people's individual privacy is respected and preserved.
So I wanted to dig into that, right? So you're right, privacy, right? You just shoot. But then on the alongside that is also the integrity or the authenticity of the human behind it. So how is that validated? Like you mentioned, right? There's no account creation, there's not personal information. So are you all already thinking about those protective mechanisms to be in place for tomorrow? Like these are not just accounts people create.
Yeah. So even if a couple of fake accounts are created, what's the damage they can do? In the sense that because of how port works, there's no spam that's even possible. So I can never reach you if you don't want to be reached, because there's no identifier that I can reach you at. Even if somebody were to create a bunch of fake accounts, who would they connect to is the question. Who would they bother? Who would they spam? Which itself is impossible. So the safeguard in port is every connection involves implicit consent. When I'm meeting you face to face and connecting with you, I'm consciously showing a port, you're consciously scanning it, and that's how the connection forms. So me on the other side is authentic and you on the other side is an authentic person. If I were meeting you on LinkedIn, and there I would I send you a link, then you are determined by the authenticity of LinkedIn. Like you have to be sure that the person on the other side of your LinkedIn chat is real. So that's something that the user has to be a little aware of. And contact sharing, you know that the person, I know I've connected with Anthony, and I know he's real. And if he connects me with somebody else, I know that it's him who connected me with somebody else. So I know you have to be real as well because I trust Anthony. So every connection involves some level of implicit consent, and because of that, the risk of connecting with a fake profile or somebody bad is very low, compared to conventional platforms where the risk is huge. Tons of scams happen today where some random number reaches out to you claiming to be your long lost friend, blah, blah, blah. And so all of that stuff can never happen because spamming essentially becomes impossible on port. So you're never reached out to by somebody you don't want to talk to.
That's actually great. It's getting some of those human connections back, right? To actually see.
Yeah, in simple terms, I was going to say there's a firm handshake that needs to happen before you start talking from A to B or B to A, right? Without which it doesn't get initiated. So enough of technical stuff, Aniruddh. Let's talk a little bit about Aniruddh, the CEO, right? I mean, so you're a math guy, you're a science guy, and somebody who wanted to do PhD. But in a way, COVID forced you to start a company, and obviously you love your science and our math. I mean, so between Abhinav, who is your CTO, and yourself, when you guys came together, how did you guys choose and pick saying, oh, Aniruddh, you got to be CEO versus CTO? I mean, how did that come about? Or toss a coin?
No, I think it was kind of because I was the one who approached Abhinav and said, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's the product I have in mind. Here's the protocol I have in mind. Kind of because I came up with the proposition, I think that's kind of, trust me, I would love for the equation to be flipped. I would love to just be the CTO and just work on tech all day. It's not fun being, apart from the 2 seconds of pride you get from calling yourself CEO. Other than that, it's just not a fun journey. 80% of the job's fun, but most of the fun I get is out of working on the tech. So yes, it just became because he was better at me than on the tech stuff, and I came to him with the idea. So I think that's how it kind of fell in place.
Yeah, you're not alone, because I mean I've come across so many startups where it's deeply technical, right? I mean, and both the founders or all the 3 founders are all technical. I mean, they just want to move away from the CEO stuff and give it to somebody else. They'd rather be coding 24/7 or work on infrastructure 24/7 than do with the day-to-day stuff. So, but having been the CEO, how's the journey been for you? I mean, would you do this again? I mean, what are the learnings that you've told yourself, saying, okay, these are things that because I mean, right now people are dependent on you. You know, you've raised a round of funding. I saw you have a wonderful team around you. You got to build a culture. There's so much more than you just thinking about port and what port can do. I mean, you got to drive a company and build something, right? I mean, how has that evolved for you, and how has that journey been for you?
I think it's been kind of difficult in the sense that I think I was kind of pushed into the deep end, in terms of building a team and all of that. So I had to learn how to swim. So that's in a nutshell, that's how it's been. We've made plenty of mistakes in hiring people. plenty of mistakes in not delegating work properly. We've made a lot of mistakes in terms of not prioritizing our work properly and kind of getting delayed. So it's been like learning the hard way kind of thing. So it took us 6 months to kind of be comfortable in these shoes and make those mistakes and correct ourselves based on those mistakes. So now I have a good team, but it took us like 10 months to build that team properly. Plenty of people came and went, and you never understand how good somebody is until you work with them for a couple of months. But in case of an early stage startup, you only have a couple of months to work on something. Otherwise, your runway is going to run out. So there's a lot of challenges. But I think the best learning for me is to try and figure out how to trust your people. And maybe they don't get it in a day, but if you keep spoon feeding them, they're going to expect that you will do it eventually. So you just have to like delegate something and trust them to see it through. If they don't see it through, then hey, if you're not able to delegate something of this level of complexity to your primary engineer, maybe they might not be best suited for that position. But if you cannot delegate properly, you cannot basically start building. And that's where I've struggled the most. And now I think over the last month, 2 months, I think I've become better at delegating stuff. Hopefully a month from now, I would like to be completely out of tech and just focusing on growth and technology adoption. Even though I would miss tech like crazy, I think that's where I should be given my role in the company right now.
You can secretly code in the night and do the CEO job during the day, I guess. Yeah.
That shows the maturity of now getting into the CEO, right? You already acknowledge where you need to focus and let others pick up some of that burden. So that's actually great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And given that this is your first rodeo, so to speak, Aniruddh, right after college, I mean, how did your families take it? How did your parents react saying, hey, you're not going to go work in a Google or a Microsoft, instead you're going to work on a protocol? How did your family react?
Being an only child, I think it's. I think they've been incredibly supportive. Obviously, they get stressed out quite a bit. They're like, they see me working my ass off, and they're like, "How are you working? Like, how are you alive?" Sometimes literally ask me, "How are you alive?" For the first time in my life, I'm getting scolded for working too much. All through college, it's like, study, you're not working hard enough. You have to go back and study and do this stuff. Now I'm getting big lectures for working myself to death and like, take a break, do this, do that. So I think they kind of see that this is kind of like, I'm in the zone right now. I'm kind of working on something that I believe in. I think that makes them happy. And so they've been incredibly supportive, been blessed that way. But yeah, they're not comfortable watching me work very long hours and get into unhealthy habits like not eating, skipping meals, sleeping really late at night. So that stuff is something that bothers them more than anything else. Yeah.
Good, Riddhi.
No, I was gonna say, I'm like, they might. That would have been an incredible conversation explaining them this concept, because I'm sure, right? Like, they're like, finally, we've mastered all these data points and information, and our communications work just fine, and you're going to come in and do the disruption. I don't know how that conversation would have gone, but I'm glad that they're supportive because they see the passion that's driving you.
Yeah. So what's happened now is, so they're all port users now. My parents, my family, we have port groups and port chats. So what's happened is they know if I get a message on port, I'm kind of obligated to reply to improve adoption. And so now the frequency at which I get messages from them has just skyrocketed. Like, hey, what time did you sleep last night? Did you eat? That stuff. And I kind of have to reply because they do this annoying thing where if I don't reply to them quick enough, they kind of text me on WhatsApp or Signal or something like that, just annoy me.
They know which buttons to push, essentially.
They know exactly which buttons to push.
Yeah, they're after all your parents. All right.
Yep.
So Aniruddh, let's before we go, this is a great start for you guys, and it's a universal problem, right? Not just in India, where to your point, people are collecting your phone numbers for at every possible junction, but privacy is just obviously much more than phone numbers, right? I think you would admit that. I mean, you're barely scratching the surface with
Yeah.
what you're trying to do with just Port, but with Numberless as a company, Numberless and or the Port protocol, what's your long term vision that you have in your?
So the long-term vision is, um, I like to think of the roadside vendor in India. So somebody selling you, let's say, fruit on a roadside cart. All they care about is you paying them something, and all you care about is getting fruit from them. So the transaction is really simple. Now, the way the world is, each transaction, let's say I want to buy fruit online, the transaction is I give them all this information about me, including where I live to my phone number, to all this information attached to my phone number. I give them my bio data just to buy something from them. So same thing with communication, just to connect with somebody. In the olden days, it was like you mentioned a firm handshake, Anthony. In the olden days, it literally was a firm handshake. I introduce myself as Aniruddh, you introduce yourself as Anthony. Firm handshake, and we're connected. Now I give you so much information about myself in the sense of giving you my phone number just to connect with you. So the vision is to kind of regress human nature a little bit to make our digital transactions simpler, almost as simple as our physical transactions. So with Numberless, I think that is something that's achievable. We can make connecting something seem very similar to a firm handshake. In that I know your name, you know my name, we're connected, we have a communication channel, and that's about it. You don't know anything else. And I want to expand that into other digital places where things become simpler, the transactions become simpler, as simple as these roadside vendor transactions. So that's where the broader vision is, but I know that's far away, and I know that's a hard problem to solve. Sometimes market forces are in your direction, sometimes they're not. But like you said, I think it's like my professor said, in your 20s, just do something crazy, work on a crazy problem. Worst case scenario, you don't solve it, and then you can do something safer. So I just want to try my hand at it.
Okay, that's great. So, Aniruddh, for people who are listening to the podcast, investors or anyone, what can they do for you if you have an ask out there?
Check out Port, try out Port, become a user who is not actively sharing their personal information everywhere. Just start with good personal digital hygiene. That's the most you can do for us at this point. Couple of months from now, if you believe in this movement, if you believe in the technology that we're building, and a couple of months from now, we're planning on raising more resources to kind of put this vision at play. That's when I think we would be raising more resources in terms of not just money, but connections and doors to be opened for us. And there they can help us a little bit as well. But first, just download Port, see if this makes sense to you as a user. That's all.
That is great. All right. Anthony, anything or
No, thanks so much, Aniruddh, for jumping on a holiday in India. So happy Saraswati Puja, as they say. So we'll speak to you soon. Good luck with everything you do, Aniruddh, to you and your team for Numberless and Port, and we'll be sure to publish all these details on the podcast as well. Thanks, Aniruddh.
Good luck to you guys as well. I've been listening to some of your content. You've been doing a great job. So I'm looking forward to more content coming up. I just subscribed to you guys, so I'm just going to keep seeing your content now. Is it weekly?
Yay! Yes, weekly.
Okay, perfect. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.